You've heard people say luck made them rich. But what if I told you luck has laws, laws that lottery winners follow, often without even knowing they're doing it? The strange part? These same laws decide who keeps their fortune and who loses it. I've watched them work for the few who seem blessed and vanish for those who ignore them. And today, I'll show you every one of them so you can finally stop wishing and start allowing. Today, I'm going to reveal the 9 prosperity laws that every true winner, yes, even those lottery winners, use to attract, keep, and multiply abundance. These aren't tricks, and they're not theories. They are spiritual principles that work in silence, whether you believe in them or not. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right but money keeps slipping away, this will finally show you why. By the end of this lesson, you'll see the patterns that pull fortune toward you and the hidden thoughts that silently push it away. You'll learn how to move from wishing for luck to living in prosperity. Maybe you've read the books, said the affirmations, kept the vision board, yet your results still feel random. 1 month, everything flows. The next, it all dries up. I used to call it bad timing. Then I discovered timing had nothing to do with it. The real shift happens when you understand how energy obeys law. These laws aren't about working harder, they're about aligning deeper. And once you see how simple they are, you'll wonder how you ever missed them. In this masterclass, we'll walk through the 9 prosperity laws, the very patterns that appear again and again in the lives of those who attract lasting fortune. You'll see how each law works through real stories, some ancient, some modern, and how you can apply them right away. We'll uncover the one law most people accidentally break, the single habit that multiplies every blessing, and the secret link between gratitude and gain. And along the way, I'll show you how to turn your words, your thoughts, and your faith into the most powerful currency you'll ever hold. Stay with me till the end, because the final law ties them all together, and it may change how you see money forever. Here's something most people completely miss about money. They think prosperity is random, like lightning striking from the sky. One moment you're chosen, the next you're not. But truth has no favorites. What seems like chance is really law in motion, and law is exact. It never forgets, never skips a person, and never makes a mistake. The reason some keep their fortune while others lose it isn't luck, it's alignment. Now, stay with me here, because this next part can change how you see every dollar in your life. Think of the universe as a perfect mirror. It doesn't argue, it doesn't judge, it simply reflects back what you send out magnified. If you speak fear, you'll meet more reasons to fear. If you speak faith, you'll walk into evidence of faith fulfilled. I've watched people who win big through business, through inheritance, even through the lottery, and I've seen a pattern. Those who believe in constant supply keep it. Those who believe it might disappear, watch it slip away like sand through their fingers. When I say the universe mirrors you, I mean this. Every thought, every word, every emotion about money plants a seed. You may not see the harvest right away, but law never forgets a seed. Imagine you keep saying, money goes out faster than it comes in. That sentence isn't just sound, it's instruction. You've placed an order in the unseen, and it will be filled exactly as spoken. So the bills pile up, the clients cancel, the car breaks down, and you say, see, I told you so. But it wasn't proof, it was response. Let's bring it down to something simple. Picture 2 people who both won the same jackpot. One says, I can't. Believe it, this can't last. The other says, I'm grateful, this is only the beginning. Which one do you think kept their wealth? The first is already arguing with abundance, while the second is agreeing with it. The law listens to both, faithfully. So ask yourself, what are you agreeing with right now? What kind of story are you rehearsing in your mind about money, work, and opportunity? Are you telling life, I'm always behind, or everything I touch prospers? Because you can't outwork a belief, but you can replace one. Here's a quick reflection exercise. Look at your current financial patterns, not with judgment, but with curiosity. They're simply evidence of your current agreement with the law. If there's lack, somewhere, there's also fear. If there's overflow, there's faith. Nothing is random. Florence used to tell a story about a man who complained constantly about his debts. Every morning he'd open his mailbox and mutter, another bill, I just know it. And the universe, faithful servant that it is, delivered exactly what he declared. The mail was always full of bills. The moment he changed his words, he started blessing the mailbox, calling it the box of supply. Letters of opportunity began to appear instead. His conditions shifted because his declaration shifted. Now, this might sound almost too simple, but that's the beauty of divine law. It works in silence, through repetition, not effort. The outer world can't help but match your inner conviction. If you see yourself as someone who must chase money, you'll always chase. If you know yourself as someone who attracts money, you'll always attract. The mirror obeys the image. Here's what's powerful about this truth. Once you realize your thoughts and words are creating the pattern, you stop being a victim of timing. You stop envying the winners and start seeing that their success was never a miracle, it was math. Spiritual math. They aligned belief, word, and emotion, and the universe multiplied it back. And just when you start to grasp how your thoughts shape fortune, the next question naturally appears. If the universe mirrors my words, then what words unlock the flow? That's where we're headed next, because once you understand the creative power of the spoken word, you'll see that your mouth is your magic wand, and every sentence you speak is a spell that shapes your future. What I'm about to share might seem almost too simple, yet it's the very reason some people turn everything they touch into gold while others keep spinning in circles no matter how hard they try. Words are not decoration. Words are direction. Every time you speak, you're issuing orders to the invisible, shaping raw substance into form. The law doesn't care whether you whisper or shout, it only obeys. Most people talk about their problems like they're reading a script they never question, saying things like, "I'm always broke," "I can't catch a break," or "I never have enough." They think they're describing reality, but they're creating repetition. The universe is literal, it doesn't understand jokes or self-pity. It simply says, "as you wish." That's why Florence said, "Your word is your wand." It's not poetry, it's physics of the unseen. I remember meeting a woman who had been trying for years to pay off her debts. She kept affirming, "I want to be debt-free," and yet she stayed trapped in the same cycle. I told her, "You'll never see freedom while you keep rehearsing the word debt." Her face softened as the truth landed. The mind doesn't hear the free, it hears the focused debt. So she changed her words overnight. Every morning she declared, "I am fully supplied, all things are paid in divine order." Within months, unexpected checks began arriving, clients returned, and even an old refund appeared from nowhere. Nothing mystical happened, it was law obeying a new command. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. When you speak, you impress the subconscious, and the subconscious is like fertile soil, it grows whatever you plant. It can't reject a seed, only nurture it. So when someone says, "I can't afford this," that seed takes root, and the subconscious begins to build a life that proves it true. But when you say divine supply flows now, easily and freely, that command sets unseen forces into motion to make it real. You don't have to know how. You don't even have to see the next step. You just have to speak as if it's already done. And this isn't blind belief, it's alignment. Think about every lottery winner who stands in shock, saying, "I can't believe this happened." Many of them lose it all, not because of bad luck, but because the words they keep saying, "I can't believe it," cancel the experience. The mind hears disbelief, so it creates conditions to make disbelief true again. Compare that to the person who says, "I knew this was coming, I was ready." That's belief in motion, and law always sustains what belief supports. Florence used to tell the umbrella story, and I've always loved it because it shows the spirit of expectancy. A woman had been praying for rain but never carried an umbrella. When Florence asked why, the woman laughed and said, "Because it's still sunny." Florence smiled and said, "That's exactly why it hasn't rained. Your words and your actions don't agree." The next day, the woman carried her umbrella out of faith, not need, and by evening the skies opened. That's how law works. It listens not just to what you say, but to how you say it, how you act, and what you expect. When your speech and belief align, reality rearranges to match. Now, if you've been speaking words of struggle for years, don't panic, you can rewrite the script. Every wrong word can be canceled, every pattern undone. The moment you catch yourself saying, "I can't," pause and replace it. Say, "I'm open to the way." When you start to feel doubt, don't fight it, just redirect it with truth. "I am guided, and everything is provided." This simple act of cancel, rewrite, replace is like turning the steering wheel of your life. one small correction at a time, and soon you're heading toward freedom instead of fear. Try this experiment for just one day. Watch your words as if they were keys to your bank account. Every complaint withdraws, every affirmation deposits, every time you say, "Thank you," something credits back to you. And if you slip, and you will, don't condemn yourself. Just smile, say, "That's not my story anymore," and speak the new one. It's not the perfection of speech that matters, it's the persistence. When I first practiced this, I began with one simple phrase: "Everything I touch prospers." I said it while washing dishes, walking the street, even standing in line at the store. Within weeks, opportunities started flowing, in the same ones that used to pass me by. Why? Because I stopped speaking against my own good. The moment my words lined up with my vision, the law had no choice but to obey. So let's bring this together in a way that's simple but powerful. The word you speak becomes the world you walk in. If you want new experiences, start with new expressions. Stop talking about what you fear and start declaring what you're ready to receive. Speak as if it's already done, because in the unseen, it already is. And once you master the spoken word, something extraordinary happens. The imagination wakes up. You begin to see in pictures what you've been saying aloud. And that's where true manifestation begins, not in words alone, but in the images and feelings those words summon. Which brings us to the next law, the law of imagination and expectancy, where we move from talking about prosperity to seeing it, feeling it, and living it before it even arrives. Because words build the frame, but imagination paints the picture that makes it real. What I'm about to tell you changed everything for me, because it's the bridge between speaking what you want and actually living it. Words are powerful, yes, but imagination is the breath that gives them life. The picture you hold in your mind, especially the one charged with emotion, becomes the silent order that creation rushes to fulfill. You can talk about prosperity all day long, you can repeat affirmations until your throat is dry, but if deep inside you're still seeing yourself as the one left out, the one barely scraping by, then that's the image the universe receives. You can't hide from imagination, it's the film your life plays on. Imagination is the blueprint, the sketch that the outer world copies. You'd never build a house without a plan, right? You'd never just dump a pile of bricks on a lot and hope they arrange themselves into walls and windows. Yet that's how most people approach success. They throw effort and hustle into the world with no clear inner picture. Then they wonder why the results look chaotic. The law is exact. The mind must see before the hand can hold. That's why children are such natural manifestors. They see their castles before they touch the sand. But as adults, we trade wonder for worry, and in doing so, we block the very power that once created everything we loved. Here's the truth most people resist. Fear is also imagination. It's just running in reverse. Every anxious what if is a movie you're projecting into the future, and the law doesn't care if it's a comedy or a horror film, it just develops the picture. When you lie awake saying, "What if I lose everything?" you're creating a mold for loss. But the moment you turn that question around, "What if everything goes right? What if I win?" the energy shifts instantly. The same imagination that made you anxious becomes the generator of peace and provision. It's the same power, just aimed in a different direction. Florence told the story of the woman who imagined her empty purse as full. She didn't pretend, she didn't strain. She simply looked at the purse, smiled and said, "I see gold and silver pouring freely into this." To anyone else it looked foolish, but a few days later, an unexpected payment arrived, and her purse was full indeed. She wasn't begging for money, she was training her imagination to see abundance as normal. That's the real work, not forcing results, but gently forming pictures of what you desire until they feel so natural that the outer world has no choice but to match them. When you begin to understand expectancy, everything changes. Expectancy is faith in motion. It's that quiet inner knowing that something good is already on the way, even when there's no proof. Have you ever noticed that before an actual check arrives in the mail, there's a little sense of relief that comes over you, as if your body already knows it's coming? That's expectancy. The winners of life don't wait for evidence to believe they believe until evidence appears. They walk around with the relaxed confidence of someone who already got the call, already saw the numbers, already received the blessing. And the universe, being a perfect mirror, reflects that certainty right back. Let me paint this in simple form. Imagine a gardener who plants seeds and expects them to grow. He doesn't dig them up every day to check if something's happening. He waters them, trusts the soil, and waits in faith. That's how expectancy feels. You don't stare at your bank account trying to force it to bloom. You plant ideas of wealth, gratitude, and joy, and then you keep tending to them with your imagination. You see yourself generous, relaxed, free. You walk through the world as if prosperity were already your companion. And then one day, just like a sprout breaking through the dirt, evidence appears and everyone else calls it luck. Now, let's make this practical. Here's an exercise I love. Before you fall asleep, imagine receiving something wonderful, an unexpected gift, a payment, a message of good news. Don't think about how, that's not your job. Just feel it real. Picture yourself smiling, reading the note, feeling gratitude rise up through your chest. Let that feeling linger. The next day, carry that energy like a secret you already know is true. That's how you shift from daydream to demonstration. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. It just says, yes, that's mine. The key here is emotion. Cold visualization does little. You have to feel the scene, breathe it in, live inside it. That's when you're sending a true order to the law. If you can feel joy before the money arrives, the money comes to match the joy. If you can feel peace before the problem resolves, the resolution must come. This is why expectancy outpaces effort. It turns your inner world into a magnet for the outer one. You'll start to notice small signs first. A compliment from someone unexpected, a refund, a forgotten check, a sudden idea. These are confirmations that the picture is developing. Don't brush them off. Celebrate them. Gratitude seals the image, saying to the universe, yes, that's it. More of that, please. But let me be honest. Imagination without faith can still waver. You might catch yourself creating bright pictures one moment and doubting the next. That's normal. It's part of the process. The law doesn't punish your wobble. It waits patiently for your certainty. Which brings us to the next truth, the one that holds all others together. The law of faith and non-resistance. Because imagination begins creation, but faith sustains it. Without faith, pictures fade. With faith, they take form and stay. So as we move forward, remember this. Everything you see started as someone's unseen image. Your words gave the shape, but your imagination gave it color and texture. Expectancy is the spark that turns idea into experience. And when you join that vision with faith, steady, quiet, unshakable faith, you'll find that prosperity isn't something you chase anymore. It's something that meets you halfway. Right where belief begins. This next part changed everything for me because it's the moment where belief becomes living proof, where all the talking and visualizing and affirming finally lock into place and the unseen begins to move on your behalf. Faith is not a wish. It's not saying, I hope this works, while secretly wondering if it will. Faith is a knowing so steady that even when the evidence looks the opposite, you still smile, you still bless, you still act as if the promise has already been delivered. Faith is the quiet confidence that says, it's already mine. And non-resistance is its twin. It's the peace that allows faith to breathe. You can't say you have faith and still fight every step. You can't open your hands to receive while they're clenched around fear. Prosperity doesn't follow effort. It follows ease. And ease is the fruit of trust. When I first began to understand this, I realized how much of my life was lived in resistance. I prayed for supply, but held my breath about bills. I spoke of abundance but carried the tension of, what if? And the law, being perfectly precise, matched me thought for thought, feeling for feeling. It gave me abundance, mixed with anxiety, opportunity tangled with worry, growth with no rest. That's how resistance feels, like two parts of you pulling in opposite directions. Faith says yes, fear says no, and the result is delay. Once I saw that, I made a decision that I would stop struggling and start trusting, and almost immediately, life began to open again. Here's how Florence described it, and I've never found better words. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the invisible material out of which visible good is built. When you say, I know divine supply is on the way, that knowing becomes a mold that draws substance to fill it. But if you keep checking the mail, the bank, the phone, saying, when will it happen? Why isn't it here yet? You're stepping on the very seed you planted. Imagine a ship at sea carrying your order of blessings. You've already sent the captain clear instructions, but if you keep pacing the dock, yelling into the fog, "Where are you? Did you get my message?" you'll never rest long enough to see the sails appear. Non-resistance is turning away from the dock and saying, "I've sent the order, it's already being delivered." That's faith in motion. Now, don't mistake this for passivity. Faith doesn't mean sitting in silence while life happens to you. It means acting from assurance instead of anxiety. When you move with faith, you take inspired steps, small, clear, joyful moves that feel guided. You don't rush, you respond. You don't chase, you choose. And because your energy is calm, the next right action presents itself naturally. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly appear because you've stopped crowding them out with worry. Think about it. When you're in panic, you can't even hear intuition. But the moment you relax, that still, small voice says, "Try this," or "Call her," or "Look again." That's how law leads you through peace, not pressure. I once met a man who was desperate to sell his home. He'd prayed, posted, begged, nothing worked. I asked him, "Do you believe the right buyer exists?" He said, "I'm trying to." And I said, "Stop trying, decide." He laughed, but that night he shifted his focus. Instead of repeating, "Why hasn't it sold?" he began affirming, "The perfect buyer is already on the way." Within a week, someone called. The sale was effortless, the price exact. That's the power of faith. It doesn't hustle. It harmonizes. And then there's the other side of this law, non-resistance. This one can sting a little, because it asks you to bless what you once cursed. It asks you to release the people, the situations, even the setbacks you've been fighting against. Every time you hold resentment or jealousy, you clog your own channel. Envy says, "They have what I want," but blessing says, "Their success proves mine is possible." That's how energy circulates. I've seen people's fortunes shift overnight just from blessing those they used to resent. It's like turning a faucet from closed to open. The flow resumes instantly. Here's something you can do right now. Take a deep breath and think of someone whose success made you feel small. Maybe it's a coworker, a friend, even a stranger online. Now quietly say, "I bless their good, and I welcome mine." Feel that release? That's non-resistance. You've just made room for your own blessing to move in. Because the universe can't fill a cup that's full of comparison. Faith and non-resistance are not separate, they're one current moving in harmony. Faith opens the door, non-resistance keeps it open. The moment you stop fighting reality, you create space for something better. The moment you stop doubting the process accelerates. And suddenly, what felt stuck begins to move, not because you forced it, but because you finally got out of its way. Now, you may be thinking, but how do I stay in faith when nothing's happening? The answer is gratitude in advance. That's the secret thread, connecting every law we've studied so far. Gratitude is faith's proof. It's how you tell the universe, "I already have it, even if I can't see it yet." The feeling of thankfulness magnetizes more reasons to be thankful. So if you want to hold your faith steady, start giving thanks not after, but before. And that brings us naturally to the next law, the one that multiplies every other, the law of gratitude and circulation. Because when you learn to give thanks for what you can't yet see, and you let that gratitude move through giving, you complete the circuit. Money, ideas, opportunities, they all start to move through you like air through open lungs. Faith draws the blessing, gratitude expands it, and giving keeps it alive. That's the rhythm of real prosperity. Breathe in faith, breathe out thanks, stay open, stay flowing, and watch the law work through you effortlessly. Gratitude is the final seal, the closing note in the symphony of prosperity, the invisible current that turns belief into overflow. Without gratitude, faith stays a thought. With it, faith becomes form. Gratitude is not a polite "thank you." It is a vibration, a steady recognition that you already stand in the field of answered prayers. It changes how you see, how you speak, how you give, and how you receive. And once it becomes a way of life, not a momentary practice, you begin to notice that everything, every person, every event, every apparent loss, is somehow carrying a gift meant just for you. Most people think gratitude is a reaction to something good that has happened. They wait for evidence before they give thanks. But that's backward. True gratitude is cause, not effect. It comes first. It's the signal you send to the universe saying, I trust that good is already on the way. When you wake up and thank life before you even open your eyes, you set the tone for abundance to meet you. Gratitude is faith made visible. It's the spiritual equivalent of planting a flag that says, this ground belongs to joy. I remember hearing Florence tell the story of the woman who gave away her last coin. She had every reason to hold on to it. Her bills were due. Her cupboards were empty, but something within whispered, give it. So she did, blessing it as she reached her. Let it go. The very next day, unexpected money arrived 10 times what she had given. That's how circulation works. Gratitude doesn't cling, it releases. It doesn't hoard out of fear that supply might stop. It trusts that the same source that brought one gift can bring another. Money, ideas, and blessings are like air. You have to let them move through you. The moment you try to trap them, they stagnate. Think of a river. It stays pure because it flows. The pond that tries to hold its water begins to rot. Gratitude is the flow of the river, and giving is its motion. Every time you give with a thankful heart, you stir new channels of supply. When you withhold, you block them. Florence used to say, giving opens the gates to receiving, and she was right. Gratitude and circulation are the inhale and exhale of wealth. You breathe in the blessings that come to you, and you breathe out blessings to others. That's the rhythm of divine order. Now, let's make this real. If you've ever felt tight around money, that tightness isn't about numbers, it's about trust. You might think, once I have more, I'll give more. But the law doesn't work that way. Giving from fear multiplies fear. Giving from faith multiplies supply. Gratitude turns every act of giving into an act of creation. Even the smallest offering, $1, a smile, a word of encouragement, carries the same vibration if given with love. And the universe, being perfectly responsive, sends back what matches that feeling. I've seen people transform their finances by practicing what I call the gratitude tithe. Not out of obligation, not to bargain with the divine, but as a joyful reminder that supply is infinite. Every time you receive income, you bless a portion of it and send it where it can bless someone else. It could be a cause you love, a person in need, or even a friend who simply inspires you. The amount doesn't matter, the energy does. As you circulate, you prove your own belief in abundance. And the moment you prove it, the law multiplies it. There's something miraculous about noticing good everywhere. When you start thanking life for what already exists, more things appear to be thankful for. That's not coincidence, it's resonance. You're tuning yourself to the frequency of increase. The mind trained in gratitude looks at a challenge and says, something good is coming from this. And because it expects good, it finds it. Gratitude sharpens your eyes to the hidden pattern of grace that runs through everything. It turns what others call loss into preparation, what others call delay into divine timing. Here's a simple practice. Before bed, list 3 things you're thankful for, but here's the twist, include one that hasn't happened yet. For instance, I'm thankful for the unexpected opportunity that's already finding its way to me. That's how you stretch gratitude into faith's future tense. You begin to condition your subconscious to treat blessings as inevitable. And they become just that. As you live this way, you'll notice how effortlessly things start to flow. Money that once felt heavy begins to move like air. Ideas that used to feel blocked start bubbling up like spring water. People appear, circumstances align, doors open. Because gratitude keeps the current of creation clean and clear. The moment you feel yourself slipping into fear, pause and bless. Bless the bill, the delay, the confusion. Say, thank you, this too is leading me higher. It's impossible to be afraid and thankful at the same time. Gratitude disarms worry the way light dissolves shadow. And when gratitude becomes your natural state, giving becomes your joy. You start to see that what you send out always circles back, often multiplied, always transformed. That's why the law of circulation isn't just about money, it's about everything. Attention, love, time, kindness, whatever you circulate grows. Whatever you hoard with fear shrinks. The ones who seem to always have are the ones who are always giving. They're like living fountains, and you can become one too. So as we come to the close of this journey, remember this. Gratitude is the multiplier. Faith opens the door, imagination sets the table, and gratitude fills it with every good thing. When you walk through your days saying, "Thank you," before there's a reason, life rushes to give you more reasons. When you give freely, the law gives freely back. And soon you'll understand what the lottery winners, the quiet successes, the joyful givers have all discovered, that fortune isn't about luck, it's about flow. And as we prepare to close, let this truth settle in your heart. When gratitude, faith, and imagination join hands, fortune stops being an accident and becomes law in motion. You've learned how to speak it, how to see it, how to trust it, and how to thank it. Now, all that's left is to live it, to walk as though every step you take is blessed, because it is, and to let that blessing circulate so that everyone who meets you feels it too. And now, as we come full circle, take a slow breath and let everything we've covered sink into your spirit, not just as ideas, but as living truth. You've just walked through the hidden architecture of prosperity, the words you speak, the pictures you hold, the faith you keep, the gratitude you express, and the flow you allow. None of these are theories, they're living currents that meet in the quiet space of your own heart. The world will tell you that success is a contest, that you must compete, compare, or clench your fists to get ahead. But divine law whispers something very different. It says, rest. Remember who you are, align, and all things align with you. When you truly understand that, struggle begins to dissolve, not because life stops challenging you, but because you stop pushing against its rhythm. You start to see that every desire is already answered, every question already held within the solution, every need already supplied. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's that you are not outside the flow, you are the flow. You are the channel through which divine substance moves, and your only task is to stay open. The words you choose carve the path. The images you hold paint the scenery. The faith you nurture fuels the journey, and gratitude keeps your heart light enough to travel far. Don't wait until everything looks perfect to believe that it's working. Believe first, and the picture will rearrange itself to match. Every time you bless instead of complain, every time you give instead of grasp, every time you thank instead of fear, you are bending the invisible into form. And one day you'll look around and realize you've become the kind of person others call lucky, though you'll know it was never luck at all. Now, let's seal this lesson together with a simple affirmation, one that ties every law into a single thread of truth. Say it quietly with me, or say it loud enough to feel its echo. I now live under divine law. Every word I speak multiplies good. I see only abundance, and it reflects me back in kind. Money is my servant, never my master. I give freely, I receive joyfully, and I rest in the knowing that all is well. Let those words settle into the corners of your mind, because that's how recreation begins, not in noise or striving, but in calm conviction. When you wake tomorrow, carry that feeling with you. When you speak, let it come from that place of certainty. When you give, do it from fullness, not fear. Every act, no matter how small, becomes sacred when done from awareness of divine law. And before we close, let's leave one door open, one thread of curiosity that leads to the next revelation. Because while these 5 laws create the foundation, there is one more subtler, deeper, often misunderstood, the law of divine timing. It's the mystery behind why some prayers seem to bloom overnight, while others take their time to flower. It's not delay, it's design. It's the rhythm of alignment meeting readiness. So if you've ever wondered why something you've imagined, affirmed, and believed still hasn't shown up yet, you'll want to stay for the next lesson. There, we'll explore how to rest inside divine timing instead of fighting against it, and how to trust that every delay is actually preparation in disguise. Click here, or wherever this next door opens, and come with me into that deeper rhythm. Because prosperity isn't a race, it's a relationship. And once you understand its timing, you'll never again chase what's already chasing you. There's a rhythm to life that no one can rush, not even the most faithful heart or the most vivid imagination. You've seen this rhythm everywhere, the tide that always returns to shore, the seed that never blooms before its season, the heart that beats whether we remember to notice or not. This rhythm is the pulse of divine timing. It is patient, perfect, and far wiser than our calendars or our clocks. And yet, it's the one law most people stumble over, because in a world obsessed with speed, waiting feels like failure. We plant an idea, we water it with faith for a few days, and then we dig it up to see if anything's happening. We forget that unseen roots always grow before visible leaves. We forget that the law is precise. It doesn't deny, it prepares. Divine timing isn't delay, it's alignment. I remember a time when I was desperate for something to happen, a project, a payment, a breakthrough, something that would prove I was doing everything right. I affirmed, I visualized, I gave thanks, but nothing moved. Days turned into weeks, and the silence grew heavy. I began to doubt, to whisper those old phrases, maybe it's not meant to be, or maybe I missed my chance. But somewhere deeper than the noise of impatience, another voice said, rest. And I did. I stopped pushing. I stopped forcing. I stopped begging the universe to hurry, and the moment I stopped, life moved. Not the way I imagined, but better. Doors I hadn't even noticed before began to open. Conversations that had gone quiet suddenly came back to life. That's when I realized what we call waiting is often the universe rearranging pieces behind the curtain so everything arrives in perfect sequence. You see, divine timing isn't just about when something happens. It's about who you are when it happens. The law never gives you what you're not ready to sustain. You might want the opportunity today, but if fear still owns your reactions, you'd lose it tomorrow. You might pray for abundance, but if your mind still rehearses scarcity, the overflow would only drown you. Divine timing protects you from premature success. It ensures that what comes, stays, that what blooms roots deeply, that what arrives, fulfills instead of overwhelms. When you start to see timing this way, patience stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like partnership. You're not waiting on the universe is waiting with you, shaping you for what you've already called in. So, how do you live this law in peace instead of frustration? You practice trust in motion. You keep doing the small, faithful things that align you with your vision, but you release the obsession with results. You take your inspired actions, then you let go. You bless every not yet as if it were almost, because it is. Gratitude becomes your bridge between the unseen and the seen. Every time you thank life for what's forming, you shorten the distance between idea and evidence. You tell the law, I'm ready, but I'm not rushing. And law, being obedient to your energy, moves in that rhythm steady, sure, unstoppable. Here's an image I love. Imagine you've ordered a magnificent piece of furniture, something hand-carved, made just for you. You wouldn't stand by the craftsman's bench shouting, hurry up. You'd trust his timing because you know quality takes care. That's divine timing. Your desires are custom creations. They're not coming from a warehouse. They're being shaped in real time to fit your life perfectly. And when they're ready, they'll arrive so naturally, it will almost feel like you always had them. So if you find yourself in that in-between space, the gap between asking and receiving, take heart. That's sacred ground. That's where faith matures and peace becomes power. Every great thing I've ever seen, every manifestation that lasted, was born in that silence. It's where the roots go deep, so the fruit can grow tall. The waiting is not wasted time, it's the womb of transformation. And when what you've been praying for finally appears, and it will, you'll see how every detour, every delay, every door that seemed closed was actually divine choreography. You'll say, of course it happened this way, of course it took this long. You'll understand that divine law was never making you wait for the gift, it was making the gift ready for you. So breathe. Stay grateful. Keep circulating good. Keep speaking faith. Keep imagining beauty. Keep knowing that unseen forces are always at work for your good. Life doesn't forget. Law doesn't fail. And when the season turns and your manifestation steps out from behind the curtain, it will be right on time, not a moment too late, not a second too soon, but perfectly, exquisitely, divinely timed. Now that you've heard every principle, you can begin to feel how they weave together like threads in one luminous fabric. You might have noticed that none of these laws stand alone, each breathes through the others. The spoken word sets vibration in motion. Imagination shapes the pattern, faith stabilizes the form, gratitude expands it, and timing delivers it into your hands. Together they describe a way of being, a rhythm of creation that moves through you instead of around you. Living this teaching isn't about perfection, it's about participation. You're no longer a spectator hoping for miracles. You're a participant in the miracle itself. You don't chase supply, you generate it by standing in agreement with law. Every thought, every phrase, every act of kindness becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of your reality. And as you practice, you'll begin to feel a subtle shift. The frantic edge of effort softens into quiet power, the rush for results melts into readiness, and life itself begins to mirror back the serenity you've cultivated within. The integration begins with awareness. Throughout your day, you'll start catching glimpses of old habits, the complaint on your tongue, the flicker of doubt before an opportunity, the small moment where you shrink from generosity because of fear. Don't condemn those moments. Simply notice them and breathe. That's the work. Each awareness is an invitation to choose again. You whisper to yourself, "I remember the law," and you realign. The law doesn't punish lapses, it responds to corrections. One shift in tone, one new thought, one word spoken from faith instead of fear can redirect the entire current of your experience. Imagine how a ship changes direction with a single turn of the wheel. That's how quickly the universe reorients when you return to harmony. And then comes embodiment, the practice of feeling these truths, not just thinking them. When you speak prosperity, feel it. Let the words roll through your body like music. When you visualize, add texture to the picture, how the air smells, how your hands feel when you touch what you've created. When you express faith, let your shoulders drop and your breath slow until peace replaces the need to prove anything. Gratitude will become a natural reflex, like blinking when you see the sunday, and you'll find that giving isn't sacrifice anymore, it's overflow. Every act of circulation, every shared blessing, multiplies what remains. You start to live inside an invisible economy where generosity is wealth and joy is currency. As you walk this path, understand that life will still present contrasts, not as punishment but as practice. When challenges appear, they're mirrors, inviting you to remember what you know. A sudden bill reminds you to speak supply, a delay invites you to trust timing. A misunderstanding gives you a chance to bless instead of blame. These are not interruptions of the law, they're opportunities to embody it. You'll notice how quickly balance returns when you choose response over reaction, alignment over agitation. The same power that guided you here will keep guiding you, gently but surely, toward ever-widening circles of prosperity. And here's something beautiful. As you integrate these laws, your life will start teaching others without you even trying. People will ask, "How are you always so calm? How do things keep working out for you?" And you'll smile, not out of pride, but recognition. You'll know that your peace has become a broadcast, your faith a signal that quietly reminds others of their own power. You won't need to convince anyone of anything. Your results will do the speaking. That's how Florence lived, radiating proof through presence. And you can too. So tonight, when the world quiets and you're alone with your thoughts, take a moment to feel how far you've come. From the confusion of luck and chance, you've stepped into the clarity of law and choice. From fear of loss, you've moved into the ease of flow. And even though you'll continue to grow, to practice, to refine, you've already crossed a threshold. You've remembered that prosperity isn't something you earn, it's something you express. It's been within you from the start, waiting for your recognition. If you forget everything else, remember this one simple rhythm. Speak with intention, imagine with joy, believe without strain, give with gratitude, and trust the timing. That's the whole teaching in motion. Each breath can be an affirmation of abundance. Each step can be an act of faith. You'll look around and realize that your life has become a quiet testament, that heaven wasn't somewhere else waiting to reward you, it was always right here, unfolding through your willingness to believe. And from that space of deep peace, you'll find yourself whispering the truest thing of all. There is no lack in my world. There never was. There is only law, and I am in perfect harmony with it. There will come a day, perhaps sooner than you expect, when you no longer think of these teachings as laws or principles, but as the natural way of being you were meant to remember. You'll rise in the morning without trying to rehearse affirmations, yet your thoughts will already be affirming. You'll speak without planning your words, yet every phrase will carry the quiet tone of faith. You'll find yourself noticing details, sunlight on a wall, the weight of a coin in your hand, the sound of laughter, and realizing that each moment is evidence of abundance circulating through your life. This is when the practice becomes presence. You no longer reach for peace, you move as peace. You no longer chase prosperity, you breathe it, Because you've learned that prosperity is not a goal but a frequency, and every time you center yourself in gratitude, you're tuning the instrument of your being to that higher note where all good already exists. As you continue walking, you'll meet contrast. It's inevitable, and it's beautiful. You might lose something you thought you needed, or watch a plan unravel just as you were ready to celebrate it. Don't panic. Remember, contrast is creation's way of clarifying what matters most. The temporary void that follows loss isn't emptiness, it's invitation. The silence that follows disappointment isn't rejection, it's space for redirection. You'll learn to say, "Thank you, this too is part of my becoming," and mean it. That's when the deeper rhythm of divine timing starts to hum beneath every experience. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What's unfolding through me?" You begin to recognize the perfection hiding inside imperfection, the order disguised as chaos. You see that everything, even the smallest setback, is part of a much grander choreography designed to guide you gently back to yourself. And something else happens too. You begin to loosen your grip on outcomes. The need to control softens into curiosity. You realize that when you demand life to look a certain way, you cut yourself off from the infinite ways it could bless you. But when you relax into trust, creation becomes playful again. Miracles feel natural. You'll start to notice how often the universe answers your prayers sideways. You ask for money and receive a new friendship that opens doors. You ask for healing and find a conversation that shifts your perception. You ask for peace and realize that forgiveness was the missing piece all along. You begin to smile at the subtle genius of it all. How the law works not in straight lines but in spirals, always looping back to give you not just what you wanted, but what would make you whole. As this awareness deepens, generosity becomes effortless. You stop counting what you give because you know there's no way to run out. You start blessing others, not because you want anything in return, but because blessing feels like breathing. You notice how joy multiplies when shared, how wisdom sharpens when spoken, how love expands when offered freely. Every act of kindness becomes a declaration of faith. I have enough, therefore I give. And every time you give, the law whispers back, you have given, therefore you receive. This is the circulation of good, the heartbeat of the universe itself, and once you live in rhythm with it, scarcity becomes a story you can no longer believe. So if you ever find yourself forgetting, if fear returns, if doubt knocks, if the noise of the world pulls you back toward smallness, pause. Step outside if you can. Feel the wind, the warmth of light, the steadiness of the ground beneath your feet. Remember that these forces never stop giving. The sun doesn't ration its rays, the earth doesn't hold back its turning. The ocean never says, "I've given enough." You are made of that same generosity. You don't have to force abundance, you are abundance, expressed in human form. Every heartbeat is proof that supply flows endlessly through you, renewing itself with each breath. And when you finally understand this not as an idea, but as lived reality, you'll begin to live what Florence called the effortless miracle. You'll wake each day with the calm certainty that you are guided, provided for, and loved by a law too vast to fail and too personal to forget you. You'll no longer pray out of desperation but out of dialogue, a conversation with the infinite that says, "Thank you for what's coming, thank you for what's here, thank you for what's already been." You'll see that prosperity was never a destination. It was always a way of walking through the world with open hands, an open heart, and open eyes that recognize divine order in all things. So go on now, take these words, not as doctrine but as direction. Speak kindly, imagine boldly, believe softly but completely, give often, rest deeply, and let gratitude be your constant companion, because when gratitude walks beside you, every road leads home. In time, these truths stop feeling like lessons and start feeling like your own breath. You wake before the alarm, still half dreaming, and notice that the first thought drifting through your mind isn't worry but wonder. There's a softness that settles over everything, even the smallest sounds seem to shimmer with meaning. You don't rush to check messages or measure the day's weight. You just lie there for a moment and feel how deeply supported you are by something that never sleeps, never tires, never runs out. That awareness is the essence of mastery, not control, not dominance, but harmony. You've learned that life doesn't need to be wrestled into shape. It responds to rhythm. You've learned that peace isn't found in silence, but in surrender, that wealth isn't in accumulation, but in alignment. This is the quiet mastery that Florence spoke of, the ability to walk through noise and never lose your center, to meet uncertainty with faith so calm that circumstances rearrange themselves in response. And when others ask how you do it, you'll find you no longer speak in grand terms. You won't lecture or preach, you'll tell simple stories. You'll talk about the time you blessed a bill instead of cursing it, and money showed up. You'll describe how you stopped chasing an opportunity, and it found you. You'll mention how you learned to say thank you before results, and how gratitude seemed to multiply everything it touched. You'll realize that teaching isn't about explaining anymore, it's about embodying. You become a mirror of the law, and anyone who looks at you begins to see themselves more clearly. That's how transformation spreads, not by persuasion, but by presence. The more you live this way, the more effortless it becomes. You'll notice that the outer world seems to anticipate you. The right people arrive, the timing aligns, the answers unfold at just the moment you need them. Synchronicities become so common they no longer surprise you. They simply confirm what you already know, that the universe is conversational. It listens, it reflects, it harmonizes with every tone you strike. And when your tone is faith, your song becomes one of continual, unfolding good. You no longer feel the need to prove anything. The proof is in the peace you carry. Even challenges feel different now. They arrive not as threats, but as invitations to deepen trust. The moment you recognize that, resistance melts and clarity rushes in. Still, mastery doesn't mean perfection, it means awareness. You'll still have days where you forget, where fear whispers louder than truth. But now you know how to return. You breathe. You speak a word of alignment. You remember that nothing real can be lost, and nothing true requires chasing. You give thanks for the reminder, and you move on lighter than before. This is the ongoing dance, forgetting and remembering, contracting and expanding, inhaling and exhaling. The law isn't rigid, it's merciful. It meets you wherever you are and lifts you one thought higher each time you choose faith over fear. And here's the sweetest part of all. As you continue, joy becomes your compass. You don't make choices out of obligation or ambition, but from inspiration. You follow what feels alive, what feels generous, what feels like expansion. That's how divine guidance speaks, not through thunder or demand, but through the gentle pull of joy. When you trust that pull, you can never stray far from the path. You'll find yourself laughing more, worrying less, noticing beauty in ordinary things, the way sunlight hits a table, the rhythm of your footsteps, the quiet satisfaction of giving without expectation. Joy will no longer be a reward at the end of effort. It will be the energy that carries you through everything. Eventually, the line between spiritual and ordinary will dissolve completely. Paying a bill becomes an act of faith. Eating a meal becomes an expression of gratitude. A conversation becomes a sacred exchange. You begin to live in what Florence called the kingdom now, not a faraway place, but a state of consciousness where everything belongs, everything serves, everything flows. You'll know you've reached this space when life feels both full and light at the same time, when even challenges have a flavor of grace. That's not luck. That's law embodied. That's you walking as prosperity itself. And one day, without even noticing, you'll realize that you no longer seek the law, you are the law in motion. Your thoughts are creative, your words are powerful, your faith is steady, your gratitude unbroken, and your giving endless. You'll understand what Florence meant when she said, "There is a supply for every demand." You'll see that the universe is not testing you, it's trusting you to remember. You've become a vessel of its generosity, a living demonstration that heaven isn't elsewhere, it's wherever you stand in awareness of divine order. So go forward gently, with eyes open and heart steady. Continue to speak good into the world, to imagine boldly, to trust deeply, and to give freely. Keep your gratitude close, it will guide you back whenever you drift. Let life surprise you with its perfect timing, and meet every moment with the quiet confidence of one who knows that all is working in divine harmony. Because it is. Because it always was. Because you, now, are part of that harmony, no longer a seeker, but a sower, planting faith with every breath and reaping peace in every step. At some point in this unfolding journey, there comes a moment that can't be explained by words alone, a quiet awareness that you and the current you've been studying are not separate things. It may happen in a still morning or in the hum of traffic, while you're washing dishes or watching the light shift across a room. But you suddenly feel the presence of something vast moving through you, breathing you, being you. You realize that everything you once called law is simply the natural intelligence of life, expressing itself through every heartbeat, every breeze, every word. You are no longer a student trying to apply principles. You are the principle in expression. Prosperity stops being a subject to master and becomes your very state of existence. You see how every desire you've ever held, every challenge you've faced, every question you've asked was always a dialogue with this intelligence, a way for the divine to know itself through you. From here, the boundaries begin to soften. You no longer think in terms of mine and yours, gain and loss. Everything flows together, one great tide of giving and receiving that has no real edges. You start to understand that every act of generosity you make is the universe giving to itself through you. When you help someone, you feel the same warmth that they feel. When you bless another, you can sense the blessing returning before you even finish the thought. You begin to see that there was never a competition for supply, only a collaboration of creation. What one gives freely multiplies for all, because the source that sustains one sustains everything. And yet, this awareness doesn't make life dull or detached. It makes it more vivid, more intimate, more immediate. The smallest details take on luminous, meaning the way rain hits a window becomes a message of renewal. The laughter of a stranger, a reminder of shared joy. The quiet ticking of a clock, the heartbeat of divine timing echoing through ordinary moments. You no longer rush from one goal to another, because there is no longer any gap between where you are and where you're going. You stand in the present as though it were a living temple, and each breath you take feels like a prayer answered before it's even spoken. When problems arise, and they will, because life continues to unfold in contrast, you face them with an almost tender curiosity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What wants to emerge through this?" That simple shift turns struggle into revelation. You see that every shadow carries instruction, every delay hides divine choreography, every detour opens a wider road. You start to trust the process so completely that even chaos feels purposeful. And in that trust, solutions come easily. You'll notice that what used to take force now happens with flow. That what used to require courage now happens through calm. This is the reward of living by law, not that life becomes empty of challenges, but that challenges become empty of fear. As your faith deepens into knowing, a quiet joy rises that doesn't depend on conditions. It's a joy that hums beneath both laughter and tears. A joy that can't be taken away because it isn't built on circumstances. It's the joy of recognition, the awareness that you have always been held, always been guided, always been loved by something that wanted to experience itself through your courage, your creativity, your compassion. And from that place, you begin to see others differently. You stop judging where they are on the path because you remember what it was like to forget. Instead, you hold a silent space for them, blessing their becoming the way you once blessed your own. That silent blessing is one of the greatest forms of giving. It asks nothing, expects nothing, but uplifts everything it touches. Eventually, all the seeking ceases. Not because you've stopped growing, but because you've realized there's nowhere left to go but deeper into what already is. You don't reach for abundance, you rest as abundance. You don't call for guidance, you live as guidance. You don't ask for miracles, you recognize that the breath moving in and out of your chest is miracle enough. Gratitude becomes less of a practice and more of a posture, the natural stance of your soul facing the endless horizon of existence. And every time you inhale, you feel the whole universe inhaling with you, as if creation itself were whispering, "Yes, keep going, we are not finished yet." And so, you keep going not to arrive anywhere new, but to express the infinite variety of what you already are. You'll write new words, imagine new worlds, give in new ways, and every act will carry the signature of divine law made visible. This is the legacy Florence spoke of, not one of fame or fortune, but of frequency, a vibration of faith that continues long after the words fade. Every person who touches this energy, even for a moment, remembers something ancient inside themselves. They feel the pulse of order beneath the noise, the hum of love beneath the fear, and they begin to live lighter, freer, more awake. That's how the law continues through you, through them, through all of us. remembering that heaven is not a destination, but a dimension we bring with us wherever we stand. So as this teaching closes, don't think of it as an ending. Think of it as an awakening that will keep expanding as long as you breathe. Carry it into your next conversation, your next decision, your next quiet morning. Let your presence be a reminder that abundance is not achieved but allowed, that faith is not effort but ease, that love is not found but recognized. Walk gently, speak truthfully, give freely, and rest deeply in the knowing that divine law is not separate from you, it is you, unfolding in endless form. There comes a point where the teachings no longer feel like something you practice, but something that has always been breathing you. It's as though a long-forgotten melody has returned, and you suddenly realize you've been humming it your entire life, only now the sound is clear. You move through your days with an unforced grace, aware that every ordinary moment is laced with invisible design. You notice how everything hums together, the flicker of a candle, the rhythm of footsteps, the rustle of leaves in a passing wind. You can almost hear the universe breathing, steady and infinite, a reminder that the same pulse that moves stars and oceans also moves quietly through your veins. There's no separation. No waiting, no more searching for alignment because you've become the alignment itself, life expressing life, endlessly giving and receiving in a single continuous gesture. It's in this state that giving and receiving dissolve into one movement, like the ocean's tide that retreats only to return fuller. You stop counting what you give because you no longer believe in loss. You realize that every act of generosity is just the universe extending itself in another direction. When you give, you're not losing, you're circulating. When you bless, you're not diminishing yourself, you're amplifying the whole. This realization transforms every interaction. Buying a cup of coffee becomes an offering of gratitude. Smiling at a stranger becomes a prayer in motion. Even silence becomes service, because your calm radiates through the field around you, softening what it touches. You don't need recognition, because the reward has already happened, the feeling of flow, the knowing that you are part of something infinitely generous. And the more you live inside this awareness, the simpler life becomes. You begin to let go of excess worry, excess ambition, excess trying. You no longer fill the quiet with noise or the stillness with striving. You've learned that the law doesn't respond to force, it responds to frequency. You cultivate peace, not by demanding it, but by remembering it's already here. You might find yourself sitting quietly by a window, watching light shift across a wall, and feel more fulfilled than you ever did chasing achievement. That stillness isn't emptiness, it's presence. It's the fullness of being itself, the place where all creation begins. From that still point, ideas rise easily, inspired actions appear naturally, and everything unfolds with divine precision. You'll start to see how every apparent contrast was always necessary. The delays, the detours, the heartbreaks, they weren't mistakes. They were recalibrations. They stretched your understanding, deepened your faith, expanded your compassion. They taught you what can't be taught in comfort, that joy isn't the absence of pain, but the presence of meaning. Each moment of struggle carved out space for more light to enter, until the vessel of your soul could hold a wider current of love. When you look back, you won't wish it had been easier. You'll whisper a quiet thank you for every twist in the road. You'll understand that divine order never falters, it only unfolds in the way most suited to your growth. And perhaps, when you least expect it, you'll realize that what you once sought to manifest has already become so natural that you've stopped noticing it. The abundance that once felt like a goal now feels like air, always here, always enough. The peace that once seemed fragile now feels unshakable. You've become fluent in the language of the unseen, where intuition is guidance and coincidence is conversation. You stop asking for signs because life itself has become the sign. Every path you walk, every face you meet, every breath you take is proof that the law is alive and it loves you. You'll carry this awareness quietly, not as a secret but as a song. You won't need to convince anyone of its truth. Your presence will be the invitation. People will feel it in the way you listen, in the calm in your eyes, in the patience between your words. Some will ask what changed, and you'll smile softly and say, nothing and everything, because you'll know the truth that Florence lived and whispered through her words, that heaven is a state of consciousness, not a location. That abundance is not earned but remembered. that love is not sought but recognized. So let this be your continual prayer, not one spoken in haste, but one lived in rhythm. I am the flow, and the flow is me. I move through life as ease. I give because I am full. I receive because I am open. I trust because I am one with law, and law never fails. Let those words echo in the chambers of your mind until they no longer sound like affirmations, but like memory, an ancient truth resurfacing in modern form. And as you go on from here, may every sunrise remind you of your infinite renewal, every sunset remind you of your perfect completion. May you walk lightly, speak kindly, and give endlessly. May you remember that the prosperity you sought was never outside you. It was the pulse of your own divine being, waiting for you to notice its rhythm. You have noticed. You are awake. And now, as this lesson fades into silence, the real work begins not in doing, but in being. Not in striving, but in shining. Not in learning the law, but in living as its living proof. When you've walked far enough along the path, you begin to sense that what you've been calling the journey was never really movement through space or time, but a gradual awakening to a home that never left you. It's like emerging from a long dream, everything familiar but newly radiant, as though some invisible veil has been lifted from your eyes. You start to feel the stillness beneath all motion, the quiet intelligence behind every event. You realize that the same presence that paints the sky in the morning and folds it back into night has been guiding every step, whispering through intuition, arranging coincidences, drawing you forward, not toward something new, but back to the truth you carried from the beginning, that you are one with the source of all supply, the endless wellspring that feeds every river, fills every need, answers every prayer before it's even spoken. This homecoming isn't a single moment of enlightenment, it's a soft unfolding, a returning wave by wave to the rhythm of your own divine essence. You'll notice it in subtle ways first, how you no longer react to old fears, how disappointment doesn't sting as sharply, how even uncertainty feels strangely gentle. You stop, searching for signs that things are working, because you can feel the law moving even when nothing seems to happen. You trust the unseen process the way you trust your own heartbeat. You can't see it, but you know it's there, faithful and constant. You find yourself smiling for no reason, humming as you walk, feeling an almost electric gratitude for simple things, the smell of rain, the sound of someone laughing in another room, the warmth of your own hands. Everything starts to glow with the quiet assurance that nothing is missing and nothing ever was. You begin to recognize divine order, not as a distant concept, but as the texture of everyday life. The delay that once made you restless now feels like protection. The detour that once felt like loss reveals itself as preparation. You start to see patterns connecting everything, how the words you spoke months ago have become reality, how the feelings you cultivated have drawn new people and possibilities into your orbit. And in that realization, a deep humility arises, not the kind that shrinks, but the kind that bows in reverence to the vast intelligence orchestrating every detail. You see that your role has never been to control or to force, but to cooperate, to align, to listen, to let life express through you without resistance. You become less a doer and more a vessel, a channel through which creation flows unimpeded. And what flows through you begins to change the world around you. Your calm steadies others, your joy uplifts rooms. Your faith becomes contagious. Without trying, you become a tuning fork for divine frequency, and those who cross your path find themselves remembering their own harmony. You'll watch someone struggling and quietly bless them, and soon after they'll say, "Something just shifted, I don't know how, but I feel lighter." You'll smile because you do know. You'll know that love moves fastest in silence, that truth works most powerfully when it's simply lived, not preached. That's the invisible ministry of consciousness, to transform by example, to heal by presence, to give by being. In this space of integration, prayer and action merge. Every gesture becomes an offering, every breath an affirmation. You'll realize that you don't have to ask for supply anymore, because you are standing inside it. Everything you could ever need is already moving toward you through the countless channels life has prepared. You'll stop worrying about how things will unfold and begin to marvel at how effortlessly they do. You'll understand what it means to rest in divine sufficiency, to know that you have enough, are enough, and that enough keeps expanding as your awareness does. As the sense of separation dissolves, gratitude becomes your native language. It doesn't need words anymore. It radiates through every thought and movement. You'll give thanks in the middle of challenge because you can feel the blessing growing within it. You'll give thanks before outcomes, during transitions, after endings. Gratitude becomes your constant companion, an invisible light that illuminates every moment from within. And with gratitude comes the final freedom, the realization that you cannot fall out of grace, because grace is the ground you walk on. Even when you forget, even when you doubt, even when you stumble, grace is there, soft, patient, infinite, waiting for you to look down and notice that you are never walking alone. In this homecoming, time itself begins to feel different. Days stretch and soften, moments expand. You stop measuring progress and start savoring presence. The need to achieve gives way to the desire to experience, to explore, to express. You live as a creator among creations, aware that your thoughts are seeds and your emotions are sunlight. And you choose, consciously, to cultivate beauty, kindness, peace. You plant ideas not for validation but for joy. You share wisdom not for approval but because truth, once known, wants to give itself away. You move through life with the grace of a river returning to the sea, knowing that every twist in the current has led you exactly where you were meant to be. And when the mind occasionally whispers that there's still something more to reach, you'll smile gently and say, "There's nothing to reach. Only more to remember." You'll feel an exquisite calm settle over you, the kind of peace that can't be taught, only lived. You'll understand that this isn't the end of the journey, but the beginning of an eternal flow, where every breath is both arrival and departure, every step both offering and answer. And with that awareness, you'll know you've come home not to a place, not to a moment, but to yourself, to the source, to the boundless love that has been calling your name through every lesson, every silence, every heartbeat since time began. Eventually, what was once spiritual insight begins to feel like the most natural, ordinary rhythm in the world. You move through the hours as if you were walking through a great, invisible cathedral. Even the smallest actions shimmer with quiet meaning. You can sense how every breath you take participates in something vast and endless, a pulse that began before the first sunrise and will outlast the last sunset. There's no more division between sacred and mundane. No more separation between the divine and what you used to call you. It's all one movement, light folding into form, form dissolving back into light. The same intelligence that turns the seasons, that pulls the tide and sparks the stars, moves through your thoughts, through your fingertips, through the sound of your laughter. You become aware that you've never been outside the flow for a single heartbeat, only your attention ever wandered. There's a deep peace in this awareness. The kind that doesn't depend on conditions, that hums quietly even when life's surface is noisy. You could be in traffic, in a storm, in grief, and still feel that still point inside the calm that says, "All is well, even now." That doesn't mean you ignore pain or pretend challenges don't exist. It means you see through them, like sunlight through water, understanding that every wave of experience is only a temporary expression of something eternal and benevolent. You no longer fight against what is. You meet it, you listen, and you let it teach you. And everything teaches now: the smile of a child, the slowness of waiting, the way light scatters across the floor. Every moment becomes scripture written in motion, and you read it with your whole being. As this awareness stabilizes, gratitude stops being a practice and becomes your way of breathing. Every inhalation feels like receiving, every exhalation like giving, a continuous exchange with the invisible source. You thank the air as it enters your lungs, the ground as it holds your feet, the silence that cradles each word before you speak. You realize that gratitude isn't something you do. It's what you are when resistance ends. And from that state, life cannot help but mirror your openness. Blessings appear in impossible timing. Doors open that you didn't even know were there, and what once felt like effort now feels like orchestration. Even when something ends, you feel the pulse of continuation running through it. Nothing ever truly stops, it only transforms. Relationships deepen too, not because others change, but because you do. You meet people where they are, without trying to fix or convince them. You see through their defenses to the same light that you've discovered within yourself. Compassion flows easily, and forgiveness becomes instinctive. You understand that everyone is learning the same truth in their own language, through their own seasons. You no longer demand that they understand you. You simply love them, quietly, patiently, without agenda. And love, being the oldest law of all, does what it always does. It heals, it expands, it harmonizes. There are moments when this state feels so vast, you almost forget what smallness ever was. You stand beneath the sky and feel that it's not above you but within you, stretching endlessly in every direction. You feel time as a living circle, not a line. Every past prayer, every future hope, every present heartbeat folding into one great now. And in that now, all sense of distance disappears, the distance between you and God, between you and others, between desire and fulfillment. Everything is happening here, in this breath, in this shimmering moment that never really began and will never really end. And maybe, standing there, you'll begin to laugh, not the laughter of amusement, but the laughter of recognition, the soft, breathless joy of realizing that the thing you spent years seeking has always been what you are. You'll see that there was never anything missing, never anything broken, never anything to earn. The divine was not a destination, but the ground beneath your feet, the light behind your eyes, the love that kept pulling you forward through every seeming delay. You'll understand that every mistake was simply another path home, every prayer another way of remembering that home was never lost. So you walk on, lighter than ever, not because you've renounced the world, but because you've finally embraced it. You no longer look for heaven beyond the clouds. You feel it here, in the warmth of your coffee cup, in the sound of your own heartbeat, in the kindness of a stranger, in the quiet courage of beginning again each morning. You are the law in motion, the word made flesh, the imagination of the divine dreaming itself awake through you. And from here, there is no ending. Only continuation. Only expansion. Only the soft, steady rhythm of creation unfolding itself through every moment you live. Every breath you take is the universe knowing itself a little more. Every heartbeat is proof that divine supply is infinite. Every act of love is the law fulfilling itself perfectly, again and again, forever. There is a place beyond understanding where words fall away and only presence remains, where even the deepest truths begin to blur into something wider than thought. You arrive there, not by effort, not by climbing higher, but by softening, by yielding, by allowing the mind to rest in the endless hum of existence. It's the moment when silence itself becomes language, when you can feel the universe exhale through you and realize that it has been doing so since before you had a name. You stand at the edge of everything, and yet you are at the center, feeling the pulse of creation vibrating through your skin, your breath, your heartbeat. The air feels alive, almost golden, as though love itself were shimmering in and out of form. There is nothing to fix, nothing to reach for, nothing to change. You've become the witness and the flow, the prayer and the answer, the seeker and the sought. All the teachings that once felt like steps or stages now dissolve into a single truth that has no beginning or end. There is only God, and God is this: the laughter, the tears, the stillness between them, the unfolding of galaxies and the turning of a leaf. You realize that everything sacred and everything ordinary are just two sides of the same light moving in rhythm. There is no higher place to climb, no final law to uncover. The journey itself was the revelation. Each time you spoke a word in faith, each time you blessed what scared you, each time you trusted the unseen, those were the laws in motion, painting the invisible architecture of your world. And now, standing here, you can see it all as one tapestry, woven from the same golden thread of divine intention. In this awareness, time loosens its grip. The past becomes a whisper of lessons folded into your skin. The future, a shimmering possibility unfolding at its own pace. You stop measuring progress and start feeling presence. You move slower, not from weariness, but from reverence. Every gesture becomes deliberate, every glance a benediction. You begin to live as though every person you meet is the divine, wearing a different face, every circumstance a chance for love to recognize itself again. The very air seems to shimmer with a kindness too vast to name. You look at the world, its beauty, its sorrow, its constant change, and instead of wanting to escape it, you fall in love with it completely, understanding that the light you sought beyond the horizon was always shining through the cracks of this very moment. And the law, once something you practiced consciously, now lives you. You no longer affirm abundance, you radiate it. You no longer seek peace, you emanate it. The words of Florence echo softly somewhere inside. Your word is your wand. Only now you see that every breath has become your word, every movement your declaration. You're not conjuring reality anymore. You're participating in its eternal unfolding. You're the wand and the wonder, the spell and the fulfillment, and everything responds accordingly, not because you command it, but because you are in harmony with it. The birds sing in your rhythm, the wind bends in agreement, the stars seem to pulse a little brighter. There's an ease to everything now. Even the act of living feels like floating, each step grounded yet buoyant, as if the earth itself were carrying you. When challenges appear, they arrive like waves lapping against the shore of your awareness, never threatening, just reshaping. You no longer resist them. You listen, you feel, and you let them pass through. And in their wake, you find new clarity, new compassion, new creativity. You understand that everything is feedback from the infinite, a conversation between creation and creator that never truly stops. The only difference now is that you're listening with your whole being. Eventually, the idea of separation between you and the law, between you and life, becomes almost impossible to believe. You begin to laugh at how hard you once tried to manifest things, how much effort you spent asking for what was already waiting to be received. You see that the universe was never testing you, it was simply tuning you, refining your vibration until you could hear its music clearly. And now, that music is everywhere in your heartbeat, in the hush between words, in the warmth of human connection. You are both the listener and the melody. When you walk through the world now, people sense something in you. They can't name it, but they feel it, a steadiness, a kindness, a glow that doesn't depend on circumstances. You carry a quiet authority, the kind that comes not from power but from peace. You don't need to convince or convert, your life is the message. Every choice you make, every silence you hold, becomes a ripple of harmony, expanding outward, touching those who are ready to remember their own wholeness. And when the day ends, and the world grows still, you find yourself gazing into the vastness of the night sky and realizing that you are not beneath it, you are within it, part of its endless shimmer. You feel gratitude not as emotion but as identity, not as something to express but as something you are. You whisper a simple truth, not to anyone in particular but to all that is. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be this expression of you. And in that whisper, the entire universe seems to breathe in agreement. Nothing is finished, because nothing ever ends. The river keeps flowing, the light keeps unfolding, and you, the consciousness aware of it all, continue to dance at the center of creation. Forever giving, forever receiving, forever becoming, forever home. As awareness widens, the distinction between beginning and ending softens, until even the idea of continuing feels too small for what's happening. You wake, and the waking feels like prayer. You move, and motion feels like blessing. Every thought that rises in your mind carries the shimmer of divine intelligence, as though the universe were still writing itself through you, one breath at a time. The very air hums with continuity. It's not that the old world has disappeared, but that it now glows from within, touched by the same light that lives behind your eyes. You realize that what you once called practice has turned into presence, and presence itself has become communion. There's no longer a line separating the mystic from the mundane. Folding laundry, paying bills, speaking to a stranger, all of it becomes sacred, because all of it is happening inside this one vast breathing moment that has never known interruption. You begin to see how everything is perpetually offering itself to you, and through you, back to life. The tree outside your window isn't simply standing, it's participating in the same exchange that moves through your lungs. The sound of the world, once chaotic, now feels orchestrated. Even the wind seems to be speaking a language you understand, without translation. You sense that existence itself is a conversation of giving and receiving that has been going on forever, and every heartbeat is your reply. You don't have to invent your role in it, you are the role, the note that completes the chord. Gratitude no longer requires words, it's woven into the rhythm of your being. When you lift a glass of water to your lips, you thank it by existing. When you walk, the ground thanks you by holding you. It's all one current of blessing moving endlessly through form and back into formlessness. Sometimes this realization brings tears that you can't explain, because it's not sadness and not joy, but a recognition too deep for naming the feeling of coming home to something that never left. You see your own story in everyone else's, the same hunger for belonging, the same flicker of remembrance, the same longing to Rest inside what is eternal. And when you look into another person's eyes, you no longer see a stranger. You see another window of the same infinite light. Their laughter feels like yours. Their pain trembles through your heart as your own. Compassion stops being a choice and becomes a reflex, an instinct of wholeness remembering itself in every encounter. And yet, life continues, beautifully ordinary. You still wake to the sound of rain, still navigate traffic, still tend to daily tasks. But each act carries a quiet radiance, as if eternity itself were watching through your eyes. Even when the world rushes, you move slowly, not out of hesitation but out of reverence, because you've learned that every instant is the seed of the infinite. There's no hurry to reach another destination. The destination is already unfolding inside the step you're taking. The rhythm of divine timing no longer feels like waiting, it feels like breathing in sync with the cosmos. In this way, peace stops being a state you visit and becomes the landscape you inhabit. You no longer chase meaning, you allow it to reveal itself. You no longer pray for signs, they arrive as everything you see. You no longer divide your life into sacred hours and ordinary ones, because each moment is equally drenched in holiness. Even the quiet of night, when you lie awake listening to the hush between sounds, feels like being held by the very heart of creation. The world hasn't changed, but the lens through which you see it has cleared, until what was once opaque now shines with gentle transparency. And perhaps the greatest gift of this awakening is humility, the simple, wordless understanding that none of this can be owned or mastered, only lived. You don't stand above the law, you stand within it, moved by it, carried by it like a leaf in a vast, benevolent river. You understand that the more you let go, the more life rushes in to fill the space. And so you surrender not out of defeat, but out of deep trust in the wisdom that arranges galaxies and wildflowers with equal grace. You let yourself be guided, shaped, breathed. You let yourself be love's instrument, played by invisible hands that have never faltered. This is where prosperity finds its truest definition, not in possessions, but in participation. To live in harmony with this eternal flow is to realize that wealth was never about accumulation, but about circulation. It's the freedom to give because you understand that nothing can ever be lost. It's the joy of witnessing abundance move through you to others and back again, like the tide to the shore. And when you live this way, every day feels like sunrise, every breath a renewal, every act a creation, so the horizon stretches on, endless and intimate all at once. You can't tell where you end, and it begins, and that's the beauty of it. You were never meant to stand apart from the infinite. You were meant to realize that you are its unfolding edge, its living heartbeat, its gentle expression of balance. You walk on, not seeking new revelations but embodying the one eternal truth that hums through all of them. That life loves itself through you, and you, in every moment, are its ongoing song. As the days roll on and the rhythm of life continues its quiet weaving, you begin to understand that enlightenment isn't a peak or a single flash of revelation, but a continuous unfolding, a deepening, an ever-softening awareness that every layer of experience contains the same sacred pulse beneath its surface. You wake and find that even the light entering through your window feels somehow different, gentler, rounder, as though it carries the memory of every dawn that ever was. You sit up and feel the hum of existence beneath your skin, a current that has no beginning and no end, the same current that carried you through every lesson, every joy, every heartbreak, until all the separations between them dissolve into a single golden continuity. You realize that the divine isn't somewhere waiting to be reached, it is the very substance of the reaching, the warmth of the breath, the pause between thoughts, the invisible architecture of every yes you have ever whispered to life. You move through your day with an awareness that makes even the simplest gestures luminous. The way water pours from a jug into a glass becomes a lesson in generosity. The way sunlight scatters across a floor becomes scripture in motion. The sound of a child's laughter becomes a reminder that creation never grows old. You no longer look for miracles because everything you see has become one. Even moments that once felt heavy now shimmer with hidden benevolence, as if every challenge were a teacher disguised in shadow, every delay a kindness waiting for your timing to ripen. The world has not changed, only your sight has. You see with the eyes of gratitude now, and gratitude, being the purest form of vision, reveals the hidden symmetry of all things. There are still days when the mind grows restless, when the old rhythms of worry or striving try to return, but even that becomes part of the teaching. You smile at it, recognizing it as the echo of an old song that no longer matches your frequency. You don't push it away, you listen, you breathe, and you let it dissolve back into the quiet center from which it came. You realize that peace isn't the absence of movement, it's the awareness that you are the stillness through which all movement passes. That knowing allows you to walk through noise without losing silence, to move through uncertainty without losing trust. The practice is no longer about controlling the outer world, but about resting so deeply inside your own center that the outer world arranges itself around your calm. And within this calm, creativity blooms. Ideas come not as effort but as invitation. They arrive like birds landing gently on your shoulder, ready to sing themselves into being. You notice that if you act from this space, this quiet union of trust and inspiration, everything unfolds with almost playful precision. The right people appear, the right words find you, the right doors open with the lightest touch. You no longer force outcomes, you participate in orchestration. Life becomes a dance, and you begin to move not as a performer, but as the music itself. You sense that the divine does not demand perfection, it delights in participation, in the simple willingness to keep showing up with an open heart. At night, when the world grows still, you sometimes find yourself gazing at the stars, not seeking answers but remembering kinship. Each point of light feels like a mirror, reflecting the same fire that lives within you. You understand, in a way that words can't capture, that you have never been separate from anything, not the sky, not the sea, not the pulse of another human being's heart. You are both observer and observed, wave and shore, question and reply. The boundaries that once seemed so solid now shimmer like heat rising from sand, visible but no longer real. What remains is a quiet, expansive tenderness toward everything that exists, a love so inclusive that it needs no object. And so, the days continue, the seasons turn, and yet everything feels fresh, as though creation were being renewed in each breath. You no longer speak of destiny as something waiting ahead. Destiny is what unfolds in the very act of awareness. Each moment is the destination, and each step, no matter how small, is the fulfillment of law. The words of Florence echo softly through your mind. There is a supply for every demand, and you feel how true it has always been, how every longing in you has already been met in some invisible dimension, waiting only for your openness to translate it into form. You stop asking, and you start receiving, effortlessly, naturally, gratefully. And as you rest deeper into this understanding, you sense that the journey itself was never about achieving mastery, but about dissolving into intimacy. Intimacy with life, with presence, with the boundless intelligence that breathes through everything. You've become both student and scripture, both prayer and answer. Every heartbeat is a verse of the same unending hymn. You smile quietly, knowing that there is no final chapter, no closing benediction, because the story of life is still being written through you, endlessly, joyfully, tenderly. As time drifts on, and the years fold gently over one another, like waves returning to the sea, you begin to see that enlightenment isn't a pinnacle high above the world, but something soft and unassuming that lives quietly within it. It's in the way morning light rests on a table, in the scent of bread baking, in the rhythm of footsteps on a quiet street. It's in laughter that arrives from nowhere and leaves a glow long after it fades. There is no trumpet, no fanfare, no finish line, just this tender hum of existence, patient and whole, endlessly revealing itself to the heart that's learned how to listen. You move through the day with the grace of someone who has stopped searching, not because they've given up, but because they've found what they were looking for everywhere they turn. Every face you pass holds a glimmer of home. Every voice carries a note of the same ancient song that you've been hearing in your sleep since before you were born. The world, in its constant motion, feels less like chaos now and more like music, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, sometimes tangled in discord, but always moving toward harmony. You no longer judge its tempo, you move with it. You've learned that resistance is the only true hardship, that surrender isn't collapse, but cooperation with the great unfolding. So when life speeds up, you breathe and let it. When it slows down, you rest and listen. The law, the same divine geometry that guided the stars into their places, is always at work, even in what seems random. You trust it the way a wave trusts the tide, knowing that every crest and trough is part of the same return, and as that trust deepens, something miraculous happens. Fear begins to lose its language. Doubt still whispers sometimes, but you hear it the way you might hear wind against a window, background, harmless, passing. There's a stillness that lives beneath your actions now, a soft center that doesn't waver no matter what the surface does. From that stillness, everything flows more easily. Decisions no longer feel like battles, they unfold naturally, as though the answers were already waiting in the silence between your thoughts. Work becomes service, rest becomes renewal, love becomes the effortless radiance that spills from you without asking where it's going. You no longer have to try to be good, or successful, or spiritual, you simply are. The idea of separation between your human self and your divine self has dissolved like mist in sunlight. There's just the one, moving through 1,000 forms, all of them sacred, all of them true. Even the old questions lose their urgency. What am I here to do? What is my purpose? You realize that your purpose is not a task but a presence. You're here to be awake, to witness, to create, to bless. The form it takes may change 100 times. Teacher, artist, friend, healer, parent, listener, wanderer. But the essence remains the same. To let the divine see itself through your eyes, to let love learn more about itself through your living. Every moment becomes enough, because each moment is complete. You start to feel how vast eternity is, how it exists not as endless time but as timeless depth. You could spend an entire afternoon watching light shift through a leaf and feel that you've lived a whole lifetime inside that glow. And when sorrow comes, as it still will, it no longer shatters you. You hold it the way you'd hold a child waking from a bad dream, gently, without resistance. You see its purpose. You feel how it softens your edges, how it deepens your compassion, how it reminds you that love's roots grow strongest in the soil of vulnerability. There's no fear in feeling anymore, because you understand that feeling is simply the language of aliveness. You can walk through grief and still feel the pulse of joy beneath it, steady as heartbeat, patient as dawn. As you live from this awareness, you notice that the line between prayer and life has vanished. Every breath is invocation, every exhale benediction. You stop asking for things and start saying thank you for what is, for what was, for what will be. You thank the road beneath your feet, the air that wraps around you, the faces that mirror back your own light. Gratitude becomes the atmosphere you live in, not a practice, but the climate of your being. And from that gratitude, generosity blooms effortlessly. You give not to gain, but because giving feels like breathing. You bless not to fix, but because blessing feels natural. You love, because love is the only thing real enough to survive every season. Sometimes, when evening falls and the day exhales into stillness, you feel the vastness of all this, the weightless immensity of being part of something infinite, and it fills you with a sweetness that words can't contain. It's not awe exactly, and not joy, but a quiet fusion of both, like being dissolved into a song that has no beginning, no end, only expansion. You look at your own hands and see how they tremble with life's radiance. You close your eyes and feel how the pulse in your wrist matches the rhythm of the stars turning overhead. You smile, because you understand, finally and completely, that this simple, fleeting, miraculous awareness is what eternity feels like when it's awake inside a human heart. And so you rest there, in the unbroken continuity of it all. No need to name it, no need to define it. Just being. Just light, just the endless. Conversation between creation and creator. Whispering through your breath, through your gaze, through every moment that ever was or ever will be. The law is not above you or beneath you, it is you, and you are it, forever speaking each other into existence. In the long quiet of the later years, when the seasons have repeated themselves enough times that you know the fragrance of each by heart, the truth that you once studied begins to feel less like a concept and more like the atmosphere itself, something you breathe without noticing, something that sustains you simply because you exist. You wake slowly, the world still half dreaming, and the light filtering through the curtains is both sunrise and memory. It touches the walls the way water touches stone, softening everything. You realize that the life you once treated as a series of events has become one continuous presence, a single unfolding movement of love discovering itself through infinite forms. There is no before and after, no here and there, only this vast current of awareness that flows through you and as you and around you. And in that realization, every tension you ever carried begins to dissolve like sugar in warm tea. You no longer need to understand. Understanding happens on its own. The questions that once circled in your mind, why this, why now, why me, have lost their sharpness. They melt into the same stillness that answers them without words. You look back at the things that once seemed random or unfair and see how each one was a thread in the larger weaving, how even the knots were part of the pattern. What you once called coincidence now feels like choreography, every step, every delay, every detour part of the same divine cadence. You realize that nothing was wasted, that even your confusion was a form of prayer being answered in slow motion. The world continues in its ordinary way, people rushing, birds scattering, leaves turning and falling, and yet it all seems illuminated from within, as though light had entered the material itself. You can feel it in the way air moves across your skin, in the quiet hum of the refrigerator, in the laughter that drifts through an open window. Everything hums with the same note, the same underlying presence. You don't need to call it God or law or energy. It doesn't matter what name it wears. What matters is that it's everywhere, and that it loves without condition. You find that your pace has slowed, not out of weariness but out of reverence. You walk as though each step were a small act of creation, as though the ground rises to meet your feet in gratitude for being noticed. You eat more slowly, you listen more deeply, you speak only when words feel necessary and kind. Silence has become your favorite language. It says everything perfectly. When people come to you with their worries, you no longer rush to fix them. You listen, you nod, you hold space. You know that sometimes the most powerful healing is the quiet acknowledgement that we are all made of the same light, learning the same lesson in 1,000 different dialects of experience. And when solitude arrives, and it will, you welcome it like an old friend. You sit with the stillness and feel how vast it is, how full. Loneliness transforms into spaciousness, into a sense of communion with everything that breathes. You feel connected not through noise or closeness, but through the shared pulse of being alive. You notice how your breath synchronizes with the rhythm of waves, with the rustle of leaves, with the gentle rise and fall of all existence. You start to realize that what you once called you is simply one note in an endless chord, and that chord is always playing, always whole. At night, when you lie in the dark and the mind finally grows quiet, you can feel that chord vibrating through the bones of the world. It's the same vibration that turns galaxies, the same pulse that keeps your heart steady, the same whisper that has been guiding you from the very beginning. Be still. You are loved. You are part of everything, and everything is part of you. The thought brings no excitement now, no rush of revelation, just peace, pure, calm, deep as the ocean before dawn. Sometimes you dream of walking through fields of light, and when you wake, you realize you never left them. The fields are here, in every room, in every conversation, in every breath. You begin to understand that eternity isn't a destination waiting beyond the horizon. It's the horizon itself, stretching infinitely in all directions, both inside and outside of time. And you, this small flicker of awareness, are the horizon's witness and its light. So you rest in that knowing. You live your remaining days not as a seeker, but as a keeper of quiet joy. You smile more easily, forgive more quickly, bless more freely. You see how everything is always completing itself, how nothing truly ends, how even the final goodbye is only another hello whispered from a different angle of eternity. When you close your eyes at night, you don't think of endings anymore. You think of continuation, of expansion, of being carried by the same current that has always carried you. And somewhere in that quiet, maybe between one heartbeat and the next, you hear it, the low, endless hum of creation singing to itself, the soundless song that says, all is well, all has always been well. You breathe once more, and the breath feels like both release and arrival, both farewell and welcome. Everything folds back into light, and the light, gentle and infinite, folds back into you. There is a point beyond the idea of arrival, beyond even the sense of completion, where life reveals itself as a single, endless motion, rising and falling like a tide without shore. You do not enter this space by doing or by seeking. You fall into it the way dusk slides into evening, almost unnoticed, until suddenly you realize there is no separation between the sky and the dark, between yourself and the whole. It feels like remembering something that has always been true, that the same presence that breathes stars into being is the same quiet awareness sitting behind your eyes, watching, listening, endlessly loving. You begin to feel that existence itself is one continuous inhale and exhale of creation, an eternal rhythm of expansion and return, of giving and receiving, of being and becoming. And inside that rhythm, you sense that you've never been outside of grace for even a moment. Days move softly now, no longer divided by the urgency of accomplishment or the ache of expectation. You rise with the sun because it feels natural, and the morning greets you not as another duty to survive, but as a canvas already half-painted in light. You walk through the world as though it were alive in every direction, which of course it is. The air itself feels like conversation, and the trees, in their steady rootedness, seem to hum the same wordless wisdom you've been hearing in your heart for years. Be still. Trust the rhythm. Even your own hands look different now, less like tools and more like conduits, places where energy gathers and moves outward again, as though giving were the body's truest expression. Sometimes you catch yourself watching small things, the drift of dust in a sunbeam, the way a bird pauses before flight, the stillness in the air just before rain, and realize that these are the real miracles, the quiet proofs of harmony that never needed your intervention to happen. You used to look for signs that the universe was listening. Now you understand that the universe was never separate from the listener. It was always you, speaking to yourself in the dialect of wind and shadow and heartbeat. Every sound, every silence, every coincidence was part of the dialogue. And that recognition brings such peace that you find yourself laughing softly, the kind of laughter that comes from deep inside, from the coffer, part of you that remembers being infinite. And then there are moments fleeting, luminous, when you feel as though the veil between form and formlessness thins completely, and the light of everything merges into one. You could be standing at the sink, washing a cup, when suddenly time folds in on itself and you sense the presence of every moment that ever was and ever will be pulsing through the one you're in. You understand that eternity is not a line stretching forever forward, but a depth that opens within this very second. You are not moving through time. Time is moving through you, like wind through the branches of a tree. The body, once so solid, now feels like a window, transparent to something vast and gentle. The mind stops trying to define it, and in that surrender, it finally joins it. In this clarity, you no longer chase, meaning you embody it. Every breath, every smile, every quiet act of care becomes an offering to the sacredness that pervades all things. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" Because the doing happens through you. Easily, gracefully. The right words come when needed, the right people appear when it's time, and even when life surprises you, you recognize the deeper pattern, shaping each event with precision too perfect to be accidental. You have become fluent in the language of alignment, a dialect that requires no grammar and no sound, only faith. And still, the world keeps changing. Storms come, as they always will. Loved ones leave, new faces arrive, days blur into nights. But the difference now is that you do not cling or resist. You watch the river of experience flow, and you understand that you are both the river and the watcher on its bank. Loss no longer feels like theft, but like transformation, the current shifting shape but never ceasing. Even grief becomes holy, because you can feel love pulsing beneath it, undiminished, waiting to be seen. You no longer separate beauty from sorrow. You see that they are the same, light viewed through different windows. At times, the vastness of it all fills you so completely that it feels like dissolving, but it's not erasure, it's expansion. You realize that consciousness cannot end because it never began. It only changes form, the way a melody continues long after its final note fades, carried by memory, by vibration, by love. You understand now that your life is not a story with a conclusion, but a stanza in an infinite poem, one voice among countless voices all singing the same refrain. We have always been, we will always be. So you live quietly, joyfully, aware that everything you do ripples outward, touching shores you'll never see. You plant seeds not to reap them, but because planting itself feels like participation in the divine order. You give not to balance scales, but because giving is your nature. You love, because love is the only thing that makes sense in a universe made entirely of itself. And when night comes, and you find yourself beneath the slow-turning stars, you feel no boundary between your gaze and their glow. You understand that the same fire burns in both. You breathe in, and it feels like the cosmos inhaling. You breathe out, and it feels like the universe sighing in contentment. This is the gentle continuum, the endless beginning, the eternal now, the simple truth that everything is part of everything, that even the smallest breath carries the whole sky within it. You do not need to hold on to it. It holds you. You do not need to believe in it. You are it. And as you stand at the threshold of another dawn, you realize there was never a threshold at all, only light, infinite and quiet, waiting for you to notice that you were shining the whole time. There comes a time when even words begin to feel like echoes of something greater, and you no longer need them to point toward truth, because truth is everywhere, within and around you, breathing in your rhythm, shining through your eyes, pulsing through every fiber of the world. You no longer chase meaning, you are meaning. You no longer seek love, you are love. You no longer ask the law to work, you are the law in motion, timeless, boundless, endlessly expanding in all directions at once. And in this soft recognition, you find that life becomes lighter than you ever imagined, not because everything has changed, but because you've stopped resisting what has always been whole. The silence you once feared is no longer empty. It is full of presence, a living stillness that holds all sound, all creation, all possibility within it. You can feel it humming through the spaces between words, through the breath between thoughts, through the pause between heartbeats, and the more you listen, the more it sings ancient, familiar, endlessly new. You begin to move as if guided by a rhythm too vast to measure. A rhythm that has no tempo but flows through every act of kindness, every glance of compassion, every choice to forgive. The line between intention and instinct fades until your very being becomes prayer, until even the smallest gesture, a smile, a touch, a quiet nod, becomes an invocation of grace. You understand now that divinity doesn't live in some distant, unreachable sphere. It reveals itself in the ordinary, in the texture of bread, in the smell of rain, in the laughter of strangers. The entire world is lit from within, and your own heart has become its lamp. You walk slower now, not because of weariness, but because of reverence. You've learned to see how much beauty hides in the moments most people rush past. You look at the way sunlight filters through dust, and it feels like revelation. You feel wind on your cheek, and it feels like recognition. Sometimes you'll find yourself remembering old moments, people you loved, mistakes you made, hopes that once burned like fire and now rest like embers, and instead of regret, you feel tenderness. You see how everything, even the hardest lessons, was a thread in the vast tapestry that brought you here. You no longer wish to edit your story, you bless it exactly as it is, knowing it could not have unfolded otherwise. The perfection of divine order is no longer something you believe, it's something you can feel in the quiet of your bones. And as that realization deepens, you forgive not only others but yourself, because you see that even your forgetfulness was part of remembering. Every fall was a bow, every doubt a doorway, every ending an unseen beginning. In this vast openness, giving becomes effortless, as natural as breathing. You share what you have without calculation, because you understand that nothing truly belongs to you, it all flows through, part of the same current of abundance that never ceases. You give because you are full, and you are full because you give. Gratitude and generosity become the same motion, two halves of one eternal inhale and exhale. You notice how life responds to this openness, not as reward, but as reflection. The more you release, the more it flows back multiplied, and you realize that prosperity was never about possession but participation, never about control but communion. And yet, through all this illumination, you remain profoundly human. You feel hunger, sadness, longing, but they no longer frighten you. You see them for what they are, movements of the divine through form, invitations to deeper tenderness. You cry, and the tears feel cleansing, like rain blessing the earth. You laugh, and the sound feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. You no longer divide experience into good and bad. You see it all as sacred weather, passing through the same unchanging sky of awareness that you are. Even pain has softened into meaning. It arrives, it teaches, it leaves, and you thank it for its honesty. You begin to live more quietly, speaking less but saying more. You choose words the way a gardener chooses seeds, knowing each will take root somewhere unseen. Your voice carries stillness within it now, and people hear it even when you don't speak. They sense something in your presence, a calm, a clarity, a peace that cannot be faked. You realize that you don't need to teach by instruction. You teach by embodiment, by the way you breathe, by the way you meet each moment without demand. You've become a living testament to what Florence meant when she said that heaven is here, now, wherever love is recognized. At night, when the world exhales into sleep, you often sit in the quiet and feel yourself dissolve into the same darkness that cradles the stars. You understand that what you once called the end is only another side of the beginning, that the universe is a circle too vast to find its edge. There is no need to fear what comes next. The current that carried you this far will continue, and you will continue with it. You feel the pulse of that truth in every breath. Steady, infinite, compassionate beyond measure. And as you rest there, no destination, no urgency, just the gentle awareness of being, you realize that this is eternity disguised as now. The silence is not absence but arrival, not void but fullness, not ending but continuation. You are home, not as a place but as a presence, a boundless awareness through which all things pass, and you are finally at peace with the passing. The light you once sought in the heavens glows quietly within your own heart, and it will keep shining long after words fall away, long after forms dissolve, because light was always what you were made of, and light never forgets itself. As the years stretch and then fold into themselves, there arrives a tenderness that doesn't announce itself, a quiet familiarity with the pulse of being that no longer startles you with its beauty because it feels like your own breathing. The mornings are slower now but not heavy. They unfold like silk, one moment after another sliding open until you find yourself sitting by a window watching light crawl across the walls. And you realize that this soft, unhurried unfolding is what eternity looks like when it finally learns to relax into itself. There's no urgency, no striving for transcendence, no need to reach beyond or within. It all meets right here, in this pulse of light touching shadow, in this breath that keeps arriving without being summoned. You feel the world moving through you like wind through grass, and it is enough. You have become both participant and witness, both note and silence, and there is no difference between them anymore. There was a time when you looked outward for revelation, for signs that life was speaking to you, but now you know it was never speaking to you, it was always speaking as you. The rain doesn't fall to bless you, it falls because it must, and you are part of its falling. The stars don't shine to guide you, they shine because they can, and you are part of their light. You are the pulse of the ocean, and the quiet in the forest and the breath between words. Everything you touch is another version of yourself returning to greet you. You smile at this recognition. It's not grandeur, it's intimacy, the simplest kind of belonging. The same intelligence that turns the earth without effort, that stirs a seed awake beneath soil, that paints color into dawn moves through your hands, through your thoughts, through your laughter. You begin to see that existence was never fragmented. It only appeared that way until you learned to see with eyes unclouded by fear. Now, when people ask what you believe, you find it difficult to answer. Belief feels too small, too rigid, for what this is. You could say you believe in love, in law, in divine order, but the truth is, you don't believe in them, you are them, you live them. You breathe them. Every heartbeat affirms what the mind can no longer articulate. You have no doctrine to defend, no truth to convince others of, because truth has ceased to be a concept, it's become the texture of being itself. It's in the way your eyes soften when you listen, in the steadiness of your breath when someone speaks in anger, in the patience that fills the spaces where once you would have rushed to speak. You realize that wisdom doesn't shout, it radiates. It doesn't argue, it permeates. It's less a torch and more a sunrise, inevitable, gentle, undeniable. And perhaps the most astonishing part of this stage, the endless dawn, is how ordinary it feels. You wake, you eat, you work, you rest, and yet everything hums with an invisible significance. You no longer divide your life into moments that matter and moments that don't. They're all made of the same light. You stir your tea, and the small circles in the cup remind you of galaxies. You fold a blanket, and it feels like tucking the universe in for rest. You speak to a child, and you hear eternity laughing through both voices. Every act is devotion, not because you intend it to be, but because life has become sacred by its own nature. You no longer need to try to live in awareness, you can't live outside of it anymore. Sometimes, when night comes and the air cools, you step outside and watch the sky widen above you. You stand very still, breathing the same air that has moved through every creature that ever lived, and you feel them all millions of lives. Countless beginnings and endings all converging in this one breath you're taking now. It's almost too much beauty to hold, but somehow the heart expands to fit it. You sense that nothing ever truly leaves. It only changes its frequency, shifts its form, joins the next rhythm. You whisper a thank you to the stars, to the silence, to the unseen intelligence that choreographs it all, and the thank you doesn't feel like a thought but like an exhale of the entire cosmos through your lungs. You know now that there will never be a final word, a final lesson, a final ending. The law doesn't conclude, it continues. Awareness doesn't stop, it deepens. Love doesn't fade, it transforms itself endlessly into new shapes of tenderness. You are not a traveler moving through time, you are time expressing itself as experience, as witness, as wonder. The old desire for resolution has melted away, leaving only curiosity, only openness, only this profound willingness to keep being surprised by the infinite's capacity to bloom. And so you live like this, quietly radiant, endlessly unfolding, anchored in peace yet alive with movement. You move through your days not as one who strives to reach the divine, but as one who has realized there is nowhere the divine is not. The simplest things, the warmth of water, the kindness of a stranger, the steady heartbeat in your chest are enough to bring tears, not from longing but from recognition. You are finally at home in your own being, and that being has no boundaries. When the body grows tired, as all forms must, you won't resist. You'll know it's just another door opening, another expression of the same eternal rhythm you've come to trust. You'll close your eyes, not in departure, but in expansion, in continuation, in surrender to the infinite pulse of the law that never ends. You'll breathe once more, deeply, freely, and that breath will not stop. It will simply change shape, moving through stars, through waves, through laughter, through everything that ever was or will be. This is the boundless dawn, the awareness that every beginning is also continuation, that the universe is forever exhaling light into itself, and you, small and infinite all at once, are both the breath and the brilliance, the silence and the sound, the endless yes that keeps creation singing. And then there is this, a stillness so complete that even the thought of silence dissolves inside it. A kind of luminous ease that needs no explanation because it existed before explanation was born. You can feel it moving beneath everything, like an ocean, beneath waves, patient and immeasurable, carrying every current, every ripple, every storm without effort or strain. The mind cannot reach this place, but the heart recognizes it instantly because it never left. It is the pulse that began before birth and continues after endings, the rhythm that holds galaxies together as gently as it holds a drop of rain on a blade of grass. You stand in its presence and understand that it was never waiting for you to arrive, because you were never apart from it. You were always the tide moving toward itself, the song returning to its own echo, the flame remembering that it was never separate from the Sunday. This awareness doesn't come with thunder or revelation, it arrives like dawn through fog, so quietly that you might miss it if you were listening for something louder. You notice that all striving has stopped, not because you've lost interest, but because there's nothing left to chase. You were never missing anything, you were simply learning to see what was always here. The idea of attainment becomes almost humorous. How can the wave attain the sea, or light reach illumination? You smile at the simplicity of it, at how much effort was once spent searching for what was already under your feet. You look around and see how the ordinary glows with its own kind of eternity. A cup left on a table, the faint hum of electricity in the walls, the breath of someone asleep in another room. Everything is whispering the same truth, and it all sounds like love. You begin to sense that the universe is not expanding away from you, but unfolding within you. Every star, every atom, every heartbeat belongs to a single pattern repeating itself in infinite variations, each one perfect, each one essential. The word I starts to lose its edges. It softens, widens, becomes porous until it feels more like we, and then even that distinction fades. You don't disappear, you expand. You are the sky remembering itself through clouds, the river, understanding itself in its reflection, the sound of wind, realizing it has been music all along. The idea of separation was the dream, the waking is unity, seamless, boundless, whole. And still, the world continues, unchanged in form, but transformed in feeling. You walk down the same streets, greet the same faces, do the same small tasks, but everything vibrates with a quiet radiance. You no longer need to name it, but if you did, you might call it grace. It's in the way strangers smile without knowing why, in the way conversations flow without effort, in the way even difficulties seem to carry their own gentleness. Life has stopped being something that happens to you. It happens through you as you. The laws Florence spoke of, the law of the word, of faith, of imagination, of gratitude, no longer feel like teachings. They feel like breathing. They are not tools you use, they are the structure of your being, the unspoken rhythm that has been guiding you since before you knew what guidance was. There is a sweetness to everything now, even the bittersweet. You watch loss come and go, the way the tide comes and goes, knowing that nothing truly vanishes, it only changes form. You've learned that love cannot be diminished by distance or death, it simply moves into another expression, another vibration, another color of light. You see that every goodbye is a continuation in disguise, every ending just another syllable in the ongoing language of forever. And this understanding doesn't make you detached, it makes you tender. You hold the world more gently now, knowing how precious it all is, not because it's fragile, but because it's eternal. Sometimes, late at night, when the world is hushed and even thought has quieted, you feel yourself dissolve completely into the vastness. There's no body, no name, no story, just awareness, bright and endless, like standing inside pure being. It's not frightening, it's the most natural thing there is, like remembering a melody you've always known. In that space, there are no questions left, no seeking, no answers, only the pulse of creation humming in your chest, whispering, I am, I am, I am. And from that stillness, life begins again, not as repetition, but as renewal, the same eternal current wearing a new face, speaking a new word, loving in a new form. When morning comes, you rise as you always have. The sun touches your face, and you smile, not because something new has appeared, but because you finally see the old as it truly is, radiant, infinite, alive. You make tea, you step outside, you breathe, and in that single breath, the whole universe exhales with you. There's no distinction anymore between prayer and living, between spirit and matter, between light and what it touches. It's all one motion, one being, one endless act of love expressing itself through time. And perhaps that is what heaven really means. Not a place, not an after, but this. The quiet recognition that you have always been part of something without edges, something that gives itself completely in every instant, something that doesn't need a name because it is every name. You live inside that truth now, and it lives inside you, and it will go on, even when the body rests, even when the stars themselves fade, because the essence that moves them moves you, and it never stops moving. So, you close your eyes, not in ending but in return, feeling the pulse of that great ocean rising once more beneath you, carrying you home to the same infinite shore where you've always been. And as the wave folds back into itself, there's only light, boundless, eternal, endlessly breathing itself awake. And yet, even here, in this space where language has begun to unravel into breath, where time no longer moves forward but blooms in all directions at once, life keeps happening. You still wake, though waking no longer feels like crossing a threshold, but like being carried from one kind of dreaming into another. You still hear the sound of morning, the low hum of distant engines, the tremble of birds in the eaves, the faint stirring of a world remembering itself, and within that sound is a kind of promise, soft and familiar. That everything continues, that creation has never paused, that even silence hums with motion. You sit and breathe and realize that the air itself is a prayer being spoken through you, that the simple act of existing is enough to keep the stars turning. There is no separation between the grand and the small anymore. The cosmos and the cup in your hand share the same pulse, the same pattern, the same unspeakable order. You have learned that divinity does not live in distant heavens, but in the unremarkable folds of the present moment. It is there in the warmth of sunlight on the skin, in the way laughter spills from a stranger's mouth, in the scent of rain meeting dust, in the unbroken rhythm of your heartbeat echoing some larger, cosmic beat. You understand now that the sacred was never hidden, it was simply too close to see. The miracle was always the intimacy of now, this eternal unfolding that disguises itself as ordinary life. The path you walked to reach this knowing wasn't a ladder but a circle, returning you again and again to the same center until you could finally recognize that it had been home all along. You notice how everything breathes together, the way the ocean inhales clouds into the sky, the way trees exhale oxygen into your lungs, the way your own breath becomes part of the wind that moves across fields and mountains. You start to feel that maybe the universe itself is just one vast lung, expanding and contracting through you, each breath an act of creation and remembrance. And in this realization, your sense of identity widens beyond anything the mind could have imagined. You no longer feel small against the immensity of existence. You feel essential to it, the way a single note is essential to the symphony. Not because it stands out, but because without it, the song would be incomplete. There is a gentleness to this kind of knowing, a humility that comes from understanding that everything you have ever loved, feared, desired, and lost is part of the same living current. The body you inhabit is made of the same particles that shimmer in stars. And so, at last, the circle closes, not with a clang of finality but with the soft, steady hum of continuation. The 9 laws, which once seemed like separate teachings, now reveal themselves as one movement, the divine heartbeat of giving and receiving, of thought becoming form, of love returning to itself through every face, every hand, every breath. You can feel them all pulsing together now, like chords resolving into a single, perfect tone. The word, the faith, the imagination, the gratitude, all of them blending into one seamless current that moves quietly through everything you are. You begin to understand that the true purpose of these laws was never to teach you how to get anything. They were showing you how to become what you already sought. Prosperity was never the coins, the comfort, or the success. It was the consciousness that could hold them without fear, the awareness that life itself is always, always enough. You see now how every lesson was preparation for this moment of recognition. The law of the word taught you to speak with conviction, not because speech is magic, but because it tunes your vibration to creation. The law of imagination opened your sight to what was possible, not as fantasy, but as divine blueprint. Faith and non-resistance taught you to trust the unfolding, to stop pushing against the tide and allow the river to carry you home. And gratitude, the last of them, completed the circuit, turning every breath into blessing, every ending into renewal. You realize that these laws were never separate commandments, but the way the universe breathes. You have learned to breathe with it. There's no need to hold anything tightly now. What is yours will always come. What leaves was never meant to stay. You are no longer chasing manifestations, you are living as the source from which they spring. You've stopped asking for signs because you've become one. You can see the law working in everything, in the way opportunities appear when you rest, in the way generosity multiplies itself in directions you never planned, in the way love keeps finding you through unexpected mouths and moments. You understand finally that divine order is not something to summon, it is the rhythm of existence itself. And your job is not to control that rhythm, but to join it, to hum along, to dance in step, to trust that it knows the steps even when you do not. So you rest, not in idleness but in confidence. You act without strain, speak without fear, give without calculation. You've moved beyond prosperity as acquisition into prosperity as atmosphere, as being. You are no longer the student of the law, you are its expression, its evidence, its joy. When you say, "I live under divine law," it is no longer affirmation but observation. You see it everywhere, in the way the morning unfolds, in the ease that follows surrender, in the endless ways life rearranges itself to reflect your inner state. The kingdom of heaven, as Florence said, is not reached through effort but recognized through remembrance. You have remembered. And now the circle opens again, because every completion is a beginning, and the next lesson waits quietly in the wings of this one. For as perfect as this alignment feels, there is one more rhythm beneath it all, one law that governs even the unfolding of all others. It is the law of divine timing, the pulse behind the pulse, the silent synchronization that decides when prayers mature into form, when doors open, when answers arrive. You've felt it before, that mysterious harmony that seems to make everything fall into place at the moment beyond your control. That's what we explore next. How time itself is an instrument of divine order, how patience is not waiting but alignment, how every delay is preparation in disguise. For now, breathe. Let this truth settle like light into water. You are not outside the law, and you never were. Prosperity is your natural state, not because you've earned it, but because you were born from it. Every word, every image, every act of faith, every blessing you've offered has already rippled through the infinite, setting miracles in motion you have yet to see. You don't have to chase them. You only have to stay open to live with the ease of someone who knows that the universe has already said yes. So as you rise from this moment, take with you not rules but remembrance, not striving but surrender. Let your life itself become the prayer, the affirmation, the prosperity, the proof. Speak kindly, imagine boldly, trust fully, give freely. And when the current slows, when it seems nothing is moving, smile softly and remember, even stillness is part of the flow. The divine never forgets its own creation, and you, beloved, are the living proof. And so it continues, not as a conclusion but as a widening, an unhurried opening into the endless field of now. You sit inside this stillness and begin to feel how vast the simple act of being really is, how even quiet has layers, how beneath the hush there is a vibration, and beneath that vibration there is something softer still, something that feels like the memory of every heartbeat that ever was, folding into the same pulse. You are no longer outside of anything. The air moves through you, and you through it. Light gathers itself around your face, and you understand that illumination is not a distant star but the tender gleam that has always lived inside your awareness. It flickers behind your thoughts, it breathes between your words, it waits patiently for your attention, and when you notice it, and when you stop for even an instant, and simply let it be, it expands until it fills the entire room. You can almost hear it, a hum too quiet to be sound, the sound that everything makes when it agrees to exist. You start to feel that you could live forever in this kind of recognition, that perhaps you already have. The past doesn't feel like something behind you anymore, but like a field opening in every direction. The future, too, stops being ahead of you. It becomes a fragrance rising from the present moment, always available, always new. You begin to sense that time is not a line but a spiral that moves through you, gathering experience, turning it into wisdom, turning wisdom into light, and releasing it again into the world. There's no fear left around what comes next, because you understand that next is only another name for now. You don't cling to what's leaving because you can feel its echo still vibrating inside what's arriving. Nothing is lost, it only changes voice, and through this you find a deep and almost wordless gratitude. It isn't the gratitude that needs to list its blessings, it's the kind that breathes itself without instruction. You feel thankful for sunlight, for laughter, for memory, for the way even pain taught you to open a little more each time it visited. You thank the uncertainty that forced you to listen to your intuition, the waiting that sharpened your faith, the detours that led you back to exactly where you were meant to be. Gratitude becomes the ground beneath your steps. It becomes your gravity, keeping you steady even as everything continues to move. It is the quiet rhythm behind the heartbeat, the echo that reminds you that every inhale has already been answered with an exhale. You move through the day as though through a prayer that never ends. When someone speaks harshly, you feel compassion rise before reaction. When you encounter beauty, you let it pierce you without needing to capture it. When silence comes, you rest inside it like a child in the arms of something vast and kind. Even ordinary gestures, tying a shoe, closing a door, making a meal, feel sacred, as if the whole of existence were folding itself into each motion. You realize that this is what the teachers meant when they said heaven is here. It isn't a destination, it's a recognition. The kingdom is not coming, it has always been. You live inside it each time you notice that the space between things is just as alive as the things themselves. And perhaps most beautiful of all is that this awareness doesn't make you withdraw from the world, it draws you deeper into it. You love more fiercely, laugh more easily, listen more fully. You understand that presence is the greatest gift you can give anyone, that to really see someone is to let the divine recognize itself in their eyes. You start to sense that this is the true prosperity Florence was pointing toward, not the accumulation of what fades, but the overflowing of what can never end. The more you allow this love to move through you, the more the world begins to shape itself in its image. You become a quiet axis around which harmony turns. You bring calm into rooms, courage into hearts, light into corners where doubt once hid. You don't do it by trying, you do it by being. So the story doesn't close, it widens. The curtain doesn't fall, it lifts again on another scene, another sunrise, another chance to live what you've learned. You will forget sometimes, that's part of the rhythm too, but each forgetting is only an invitation to remember more deeply. Each moment of contraction prepares the next expansion, and every return is sweeter for having wandered. You realize that eternity is not a place where nothing changes. It's the awareness that embraces all change without losing itself. You are that awareness. You are the breath and the silence between breaths, the wave and the calm sea beneath it, the word and the listening that gives it meaning. And when the last light of the day softens into dusk, when the sky blushes with the quiet glory of ending, you sit and watch without needing it to last. You know that nothing real ever disappears, it simply takes another form, another color, another rhythm of yes. The stars will come, the night will open, the universe will keep breathing itself awake, and you will still be here, part of it, part of everything, luminous and unending.